Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Yohnka, and I am the Director of Communications and Public Policy at the ACLU of Illinois. And I am honored to be your host again this afternoon. Welcome to the ACLU of Illinois Lunch. I'm going to talk in just a minute about the folks who are here. I want to take just a minute before I do. Some of you may have noticed when you came in, there was a slide that talked about 3 giants of civil liberties that we lost this year. Babs Joseph, Lucy Minor, and Fran Sullivan. We wish they were here with us to be part of this audience, and we appreciate all that they did over many years to support the work of the ACLU. You know, if you just take a moment to look up and look around, there are more than 1,300 supporters of civil rights and civil liberties gathered together in this room. And there are more than 200 people online watching us who wish they were in this room now. So as we begin today, let me be abundantly clear about one thing. The more than 50% of the American people who did not support Donald Trump in the election, who do not want a monarch, we are not going to stand idly by as Trump ruins our government and punishes our friends and neighbors. Punishes our friends and neighbors simply because he sees them as the other. So together today, we can say at the top of our lungs that we will not be silent. There is an amazing diversity of people who are here today. We thank our sponsors for today's event. You can see those folks listed in the materials that are at your chair. Many of these supporters have advanced the work of the ACLUs for years. There are many brand new members and supporters who found their way to us in this moment of an unfolding constitutional crisis. We're joined by the members of the ACLU of Illinois Board of Directors, including our board president, Jill Metz. Also here today are the members of the staff of the ACLU, led by our executive director, Colleen, who you will hear from later in the program. We're joined from across the state by ACLU members and supporters, including our chapters in Peoria, in Springfield, in Champaign County, in Bloomington Normal, the Barrington area. They're alongside student chapters from Northwestern University Law School, Illinois State University, Bradley University, UIC Law School, and Lane Tech High School. We're also really pleased to be joined by members of 2 new ACLU groups that founded since the election from Rockford and from Coles and Clark County. There are members and leaders from our Next Generation Society who are marking an important anniversary this year. We're joined by foundation partners, and we also recognize allies from other organizations committed to advancing civil liberties and social justice who are here with us today. And I want to give a special shout out to the National Immigrant Justice Center and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. We've been working with these 2 organizations a lot in the last few weeks, as you might imagine. We also have a number of ACLU clients and former clients. These are folks who put their name on the line to challenge injustice, and we are so proud to welcome them, as well as family, friends, and everyone else who is here. I also should note that we're proud to welcome a number of elected officials. I see Representative Bill Foster, Representative Sean Casten, and Representative Robin Kelly from the U.S. House of Representatives. We're also pleased to be joined by Attorney General Kwame Raoul, who is Mr. Attorney General, I was about to talk about all the good work you're doing, but it seems that they already know, so we'll just move on from there. We're joined by members of the Illinois Senate and the Illinois House of Representatives, as well as many local officials, county officials, and others, including those who joined our host committee for today. I want to pause very briefly, finally, to recognize our cooperating counsel. These are lawyers in private practice who assist the ACLU in our pursuit of civil rights and civil liberties. As you know, lawyers and their firms are under attack today as the administration attempts to reduce to rubble the rule of law. We applaud the law firms who are standing up to the administration's bullying, as well as leaders of the organized bar, including the Chicago Bar Association and the American Bar Association, who are standing in opposition to the attack on lawyers. Thank you all for being here. That's a long list. You know, looking around the room, I see, if I can borrow a phrase from the first Trump administration, the very best people. Because you're actually the people who are committed to creating a more perfect union. We see people who recognize that this country never really has been great, because achieving greatness is always in process. Because this afternoon is about being in this community and sharing and learning from one another, we're going to do something a little bit different than what we have normally done at this lunch, which is we're going to take a 10-minute break so that you can say hello and visit with the people at your table. So enjoy one another's company, and I will be back in 10 minutes. Okay, folks, we're back. If everybody could take their seat. We're back. Just in case you were wondering, we gave you a little longer than 10 minutes. It turned out there was a little issue with the amplification and not enough people could hear me, which has really been a problem for my entire life. So I'm just going to start. I promise I'm not going to start over. So let's get back to work. 74 days ago, Donald Trump took the oath of office to serve as President of the United States for the second time. It just feels like a lifetime. In that time, we've seen attacks on free speech and LGBTQ+ rights, attacks on teaching an accurate representation of American history, the rolling back of anti-discrimination and hiring practices by the federal government and others, threats to cut funds to anyone who doesn't follow the discriminatory practices of the administration, and labeling anyone as unqualified who isn't white, cisgender, and male. The ACLU did not wait until Inauguration Day to prepare. For years, we have been working with our allies to build a firewall of freedom in this state, a firewall designed to blunt some of the impact of the cruel federal policies we're now seeing. We have been preparing for this moment, and we are responding. But one of the things since Inauguration Day that we often hear is people asking, what can I do to help resist some of the Trump administration's war on Americans? You're taking the first step by being here. Another step is to get involved with our next generation society. 10 years ago, in a completely different time, the ACLU of Illinois decided to build a mechanism for young people who wanted to be more engaged with the ACLU and in a more direct way. Starting small and deliberately, NextGen has grown to be an important part of the work of the ACLU of Illinois and a way to reach out to so many new members and supporters. Thousands, thousands of NextGen members have come together in community to host events over the past decade, but they've done a lot more. The Next Generation Society has raised more than $1.5 million to support the work of the ACLU of Illinois. And we now have a permanent named Next Generation staff attorney position. To talk a little more about the 10th anniversary of NextGen and the lessons that we can draw from NextGen to meet the current moment, we're joined today by Emmalee Scott. Emmalee is the Director of Philanthropy and Engagement for the organization and was the person whose dogged determination and relentless efforts provided the leadership to launch the Next Generation Society 10 years ago into the success it is today. Please welcome my colleague, Emmalee Scott.
Good afternoon. I want to begin by thanking you, everyone here in person and all the folks watching online, for joining us this afternoon. Today is a powerful reminder that none of us stand alone in the struggle for our rights. We understand that being part of this struggle means fighting together for the freedoms of people we may not always agree with, who might look different from us, and whose stories we have yet to hear. It is from this shared understanding that a powerful truth emerges. Our strength lies in our solidarity. Solidarity is forged in the refusal to let our differences be weaponized, and it is grounded in the simple, beautiful recognition that my liberation is bound to yours. When we come together in the spirit of solidarity, that is people power. People power is what the ACLU has harnessed for more than a century to fight for our freedom and defend our hard-won rights, and it is what we need now more than ever. People power is at the core of the ACLU Next Generation Society. 10 years ago, we founded the Next Generation Society to empower people who believed in the ACLU's work but needed a way to channel that belief into action. By creating a space where passion met purpose, we found partners, innovators, and allies, each adding their thread to the fabric of our work. Over the last decade, NextGen has grown into a vibrant and vital part of the ACLU. We have built a community of artists, chefs, lawyers, teachers, activists, and people from all walks of life. NextGen members have organized and participated in ACLU fundraising and events, taken to the streets, championed legislative initiatives, and served as cooperating attorneys and volunteers. Since its founding, the ACLU has fought tirelessly to make America live up to its promise, and for the last 10 years, NextGen has played a critical role in that fight. The commitment and solidarity of NextGen members have strengthened our work, and the Next Generation Society will continue to be a critical part of the ACLU, both now and in the future. NextGen exemplifies the ACLU's promise to all people, that everyone who wants to help support the work of the ACLU has a role to play in moving our work forward. We need NextGen, just as we need all of you engaged and committed to the fight ahead. Because we are being tested not only in policy battles and legal fights, but in our ability to stand together, to stay engaged, to show up for each other, and to resist the forces trying to intimidate, silence, and divide us. But to see this moment as insurmountable ignores our history and the sacrifices and hard work of generations of leaders and activists who fought and won before us. History is full of grave violations against human dignity, but it is also full of bold action to address them. The ACLU has been part of that bold action for more than 100 years, and we will not back down now. Together with our supporters and partners, we stand ready to face the challenges in front of us, just as we have for the last century, and just as we did during the first Trump administration. 8 years ago, when they banned Muslim people from entering this country, we went to court, we protested, and we showed up at airports across the country. When they set the stage for Roe to be overturned, we worked tirelessly here in Illinois and across the country to secure and expand abortion rights. And when the first Trump administration tore families apart, we sued, we flooded the streets, we showed up at the southern border, and we reunited families. And now, with this administration, when Mahmoud Khalil was illegally arrested and detained by immigration officials in direct retaliation for his constitutionally protected speech, we're going to court, we're taking to the streets, and we will not rest until he is free. And as we continue to witness assaults on civil rights and liberties from this administration, and make no mistake, the worst is yet to come, our promise to you is that the ACLU will continue to stand strong in defiance of injustice. Look, none of us asked to live in an era when our rights and liberties are under siege, when immigrants are being vilified and disappeared by this administration, when immigrants should be celebrated for making our communities stronger and more beautiful. When vital community resources are being gutted by an unelected, unappointed, unhinged billionaire's whims at a time when they should be increased so that everyone has the resources they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. And when hard-won rights are being stripped away for cheap political gain, when our rights should be protected and expanded so that the promise of we the people finally means all of us. There is no denying that the challenges before us are immense and the path forward will be difficult. But we must resist the urge to see the challenges of this time only as a burden. We must harness the hope in our hearts and recognize this moment also as an opportunity, a shared responsibility to harness the power of the people. Because what comes next for us and future generations will be decided by how we, the people, work together in this moment. That's the power of we. And right now, we need you. We need each other. We need solidarity. So our ask of you, as we face the challenges ahead, is to think about what more you can do to take action and inspire others to join you. We all have a role to play in the fight, and we must rise up while we still can. So, if you're already calling elected officials, show up at local school board meetings or town halls to demand that elected officials at all levels of government use every opportunity they have to fight against the attacks on our freedom. If you're posting on social media, put up flyers in your community or grab a street sign and hit the streets to protest. If you're already donating to the ACLU, thank you. Please consider increasing your support and donating to one of our partner organizations so that we all have the resources to continue to fight. Activate your community. One way you can do this is by joining the ACLU's newly formed Community Activator Program. We created this program to empower all of us to play a role in the fight. Support the Next Generation Society and encourage the people in your life to become members. Get involved with the local ACLU group, and if there isn't a group in your area, reach out to us to start one. Do what you can to turn the righteous fire burning inside you into action. Ella Baker once said, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes." Let us all leave here today with that same determination. Let us continue to build a movement in solidarity that is as compassionate as it is courageous. Let us fight for a future where our rights are protected, our communities are strong, and justice is not just a dream, but our reality. America is not a land of kings. This is a country fueled by people power, and we, the people, will fight for it with everything we have, and together we will win. Thank you for being part of the fight with the ACLU.
Thank you, Emmalee. I'm going to introduce someone now who really needs very little introduction in this audience. Colleen Connell is the Executive Director of the ACLU of Illinois. For the past 2 decades, Colleen has had an unrivaled record of advocacy for civil rights and civil liberties across this state. She's grown the size and the reach of the ACLU and expanded the issues on work that we do each and every day. But here's the thing, and I know that it's a secret for a lot of you in this room. She has never backed down from a fight. And we are in the fight of our lives. Please welcome Colleen Connell.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here. It is so meaningful to see so many people here to resist what is truly the worst administration I think any of us have seen. 8 years ago, and I know that feels like a lifetime ago, I warned that Donald Trump posed an existential threat to our democracy. Trump 2.0 is even more terrifying. Trump seeks to replace the rule of law with a despotism driven by his petty vindictiveness. If we are to stop him, we must act urgently and together. In little more than 2 months, it is obvious that Trump is using his presidency to humiliate his enemies and to extort money and power from those who offend him. His minions, most notably Elon Musk and his Doge Bros, are taking over the federal government and its immense databases. The Bros are then accessing our personal, financial, and medical information and weaponizing it against us. Trump camouflages his power grab behind a smokescreen of lies and fake protectionism. He claims women want his protection, while he plots, yeah, boo is exactly right, while he plots to strip us of our reproductive freedom. He says people need to be liberated from a woke ideology, while he takes a sledgehammer to the legal protections for educational and employment opportunity. He crushes academic inquiry and free speech at universities, all under the guise of protecting and resisting anti-Semitism. He targets trans people and immigrants, claiming, without evidence, that we all need protection from these most vulnerable people in our society. He hopes to make us so fearful of others that we will give up our liberty in exchange for a false security that is as worthless as a degree from Trump University. Trump is amplifying his petty and personal grievances into an attack on lawyers, law firms, and legal organizations in hope of landing a knockout punch on the rule of law. We saw that so clearly on March 21st, when Trump directed the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to punish lawyers who bring lawsuits against him or his administration. He then doubled down on his attacks with executive orders targeting specific law firms and individual lawyers. Why go after lawyers? Because we are the champions of the rule of law. While our legal system has never been perfect, the rule of law prevents our society from devolving into a nation where the only thing that matters is power, where might makes right. Distilled to its essence, the rule of law prevents the government, including the president, from doing awful things to people for arbitrary and capricious reasons, or for no reason whatsoever. The stakes are so high. We know that individual rights are dishonored in countries where the rule of law has disintegrated. Economic rights are not secure without a legal system that enforces basic rules and guards against arbitrary confiscation of personal property by an avaricious ruler. Humanity does not flourish in countries that do not have the rule of law. When might makes right, we see only famine, violence, sexual violence, the persistence of disease, and economic ruin. In short, the rule of law matters because it protects all of us. It protects us from descending into a dystopia where the president abuses the immense power of the federal government to enrich himself, his family, and the billionaire class, all while treating those who oppose him with financial ruin, physical violence, imprisonment, or banishment. Trump is attacking the rule of law to demolish the very checks and balances that the Constitution imposes on each branch of our government, including the presidency. That is what motivates his vendetta against lawyers and legal organizations. He hopes to scare us into submission, clearing the way for him to consolidate all federal power into the hands of a single person, Donald J. Trump, unchecked by Congress and unrestrained by the courts. Thus unshackled, Trump will use that power to benefit himself, all while fully implementing the autocratic vision of Project 2025. So let me be clear. The ACLU and its lawyers and its staff will not be scared into submission. We are not backing down from this fight. We are going to continue to file lawsuits challenging the Trump administration's lawlessness. We've already challenged his efforts to erase the 14th Amendment's explicit promise of birthright citizenship. We have contested the removal of life-saving medical information from government websites. The ACLU has defended the ability of state and local governments to make decisions about public safety and local spending. We have challenged the executive orders targeting trans people, their military service, their access to facilities, and the right to make decisions about medical care. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on the ACLU's advocacy on behalf of immigrants and trans people. There is a chorus of voices asserting that advocacy protecting trans folks and immigrants gave Donald Trump his second term. These people suggest that if we, including the ACLU, just back away from these issues and focus on issues that affect more real Americans, we can defeat Trumpism. Yeah, exactly. Let me say explicitly, and echo the boo in the corner, that the ACLU will not retreat from our advocacy. We're not backing away from our advocacy on behalf of trans folks, immigrants, women, people of color, and everyone else who's entitled to constitutional rights. You see it, you understand it. As a matter of principle and as a matter of humanity, these people deserve our support. They are being brutalized, and we are not going to be idle in the face of this animus. And as a matter of survival, we must defend these groups for the very simple reason that we cannot cleave off one group's liberty to save our own. It is wrong, and it never works. But here's where we've got to stay serious. ACLU litigation alone will not protect our rights. If we win the lawsuits, but Trump succeeds in silencing our collective voices, we literally will have won a battle or two, but we'll have lost the war. So, folks, here's what I'm asking of each of you. Exercise your First Amendment right to petition our government, which is, after all, the government of, by, and for the people. Contact your members of Congress. Contact your state legislators about civil liberties issues. Help us use state law to maintain the firewall of freedom that we have built over the last many years, a firewall that protects the right to marry, the right to vote, the right to make decisions about our families and our health care. Urge your state legislators this term to support ACLU bills that strengthen our state firewall by protecting health data privacy, DOJ stay away, medical aid in dying, and freedom of speech. Stop by the ACLU Action Center on your way out today to express your support for these really important legislative initiatives. And if you are nervous for any reason about your ability to talk to government officials, sign up for the ACLU of Illinois' Advocacy 101 trainings. They're terrific, and they will empower you to carry your message to those in power. And then show up at the city council meetings, at school board meetings, at library board meetings, and support our many, many fine state and local officials who are resisting Trump-inspired efforts to cut vital programs and to censor librarians and teachers. Exercise your right to peaceably assemble. Show up at rallies like the Hands Off rally tomorrow. The ACLU of Illinois is a sponsor both here and across the country. Show up at the May Day rally scheduled for Chicago on May 1st. Sign up, as Emmalee said, to be an ACLU community activator. We will help you organize events in your community. Exercise your personal freedom of speech. Use your personal spaces, including family dinners, to explain how Trump and Musk are hurting not only our democracy, but each of us. Write a letter to the editor or post your comments online to express your views. Make your voices heard. And if Elon Musk can speak with his money, we need to speak with ours. Support independent news sources like Public Media and Block Club Chicago. Support them with your subscriptions and your patronage. Shop at local businesses which continue to support diversity and equity. And there are so many of them. Support universities that protect academic freedom rather than bending to the demands of a bully. Retain lawyers whose law firms stand up for the Constitution and the rule of law. I applaud the firm of Jenner and Block. It was founded here in Chicago more than 100 years ago, and it has refused to be silenced by Trump. It is suing to protect the rule of law, the Constitution, and quite literally all of us. I have to say I'm a proud alum. I also laud the many, many other firms and lawyers and legal associations, including the Chicago Bar Association and the American Bar Association, who are here today, well represented, for leading the way to resist the attacks on the rule of law. And we are so very fortunate to have here today, but more importantly, in the Office of Attorney General Kwame Raoul. Who has led or joined at this point at least 12 lawsuits by with other state attorney generals to fight for the rule of law and for all of us. We are so appreciative. So finally, we have to keep showing up today at our lunch, at the events of our partner organizations, and at every other event, because there are more of us than there are of them. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this, not my style. We all know that the challenges are legion, and that many of us are exhausted. But retreat is not an option. It's not an option. So please, march with us as far as you can, knowing that you are leading the way and others will follow. Give as much as you can and in as many ways as you can, knowing you will inspire others to carry the torch when it comes time for you to pass it on. And remember, a majority of voters in 2024 did not cast a ballot for Donald Trump, and no one voted for Elon Musk. So, folks, we must keep working. Courage, history shows us, is contagious. Together, let's keep fighting, not only against the excesses of Trumpism, but for a better, more inclusive tomorrow. We may never reach the perfection of the promised land, but together we can and must strive for a more perfect union. Together, we can fight and we can win. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen, for your inspiration and leadership of the ACLU of Illinois in this very critical moment, a moment of crisis and challenge for so many of us. And thank you to the entire ACLU of Illinois team for this beautiful luncheon and for bringing us together today. Please join me in a round of applause. My name is Sufyan Sohel, and I'm a proud member of the ACLU of Illinois Board of Directors. The month of Ramadan just ended. Eid Mubarak to all my Muslim brothers and sisters in the room. Ramadan is not only a time for prayer, fasting, and inner reflection, but a time for radical empathy, a time to remember those for whom hunger is not a choice. In Chicago, that means our unhoused neighbors, immigrant families navigating broken systems, facing raids and deportations, and the dozens of phone calls I've received every week since January from community members afraid to travel or go to school. And around the world, it means remembering Palestinians under siege, children starving, growing up amid rubble, Sudanese families fleeing famine and war, Ukrainians still reeling from invasion with hospitals bombed in recent days, and so many others facing conflict, displacement, or the denial of basic dignity. Ramadan asks us not to look away, but to lean in, to advocate, to show up, and to give. It is a sacred season of service and of standing with the oppressed. It is a return to sacred tradition and a reminder that we are all a part of a global community. That's the heart I'm speaking from today. And that is why the work of the ACLU of Illinois feels so urgent, so sacred, and so very personal. In less than 100 days since Donald Trump's second inauguration, the ACLU has worked against this administration's attacks. But we are also looking to the future. Here in Illinois, the ACLU recently launched the Illinois Constitution and Democracy Project to ensure that our state remains a beacon of liberty, justice, and dignity. Through this project, we are using our modern state constitution and the unified strategy of impact litigation, state policy advocacy, and public engagement to resist Trump's overreach and to protect the rights of all. In a moment like this, that it is not enough to believe in justice. We have to build it together. I'm so thrilled to share a very generous donor has agreed to match the first $50,000 raised at this luncheon today. On each and every one of your tables, there's a bright green envelope right in the middle. Inside, there are smaller envelopes for each of you. I encourage you to take one out, pass it around. Make sure everyone in this room has a small envelope. For those of you joining us online, click the link in the video description. Whether you're online or in the room, you can also text the word ACLU to 243-725. Again, the word ACLU to 243-725. Or send a check to the ACLU office. So why does this work matter right now more than ever? Because here's what we're up against. For so many of us, watching or following the news these days is extremely difficult. We are told by the leader of our country that we do not belong, that we have no place in America today, and that to make America great again, we should be replaced or even erased. These messages of exclusion come in a blizzard of headlines. We've seen passports confiscated based on country of origin, political views, or gender identity. We've seen executive orders disenfranchising millions of voters. We've seen students arrested, detained, and even deported simply because they choose to show up, speak up, and protest. We see the rights that we all often take for granted at risk as group after group is targeted. These are not distant hypotheticals. They are happening right now. And if we remain silent, they will become our new reality. But our message to you today is simple. We all belong. We all have a place in this great experiment that is America. Do not be intimidated. And that is why we need to support the ACLU. And this is how we rise side by side. I want you to look around this room. Take a moment as you fill out your pledge cards and donation forms. Look at the people in this room who are sitting together, standing together against this intolerance and discrimination. I have seen this firsthand. In 2017, when the first Trump administration enacted the Muslim ban, I saw thousands of activists, lawyers, and people like all of us in this room rush to O'Hare to stand against it. A ban against people like me, of my faith, my family, my community. And those people who showed up, many of them were not Muslim. They were simply people who showed up who believed discrimination and dehumanization should never be policy. In that moment, I was reminded what it was like to be the other. Because I spoke out and helped coordinate with my former organization, Care Chicago, support for those being denied entry, I received a threatening call. The voice on the other end told me my very existence was undeserved simply because of who I am. It was a stark reminder of the isolation and fear so many in our communities face daily. But in that darkness, I discovered a powerful truth. I was not alone. Thousands stood up with me. The ACLU stood with me. And we will continue to stand together so no one feels alone again. Giving today fuels this resistance. It is an act of courage and a statement about who we are as a community. So I encourage you, please fill out that envelope in front of you. For those joining us online, click the link in the video description. Whether you're joining online or in the room, you can text the word ACLU to 243-725. Again, text ACLU to 243-725, or send a check to the ACLU office. Once you've filled out your envelope, place it back in the big green one, and our volunteers will collect them after lunch. Your gift, whatever the size, matters. So I ask you, give what you can, but give. No act of solidarity is too small. And remember, every dollar up to $50,000 will be doubled. Before I close, I want to leave you with something personal, something I wrote from the heart. Not as a lawyer, not as an ACLU board member, but as a witness in this moment of fear and quiet defiance. It's called In the Silence We Rise. In the shadows of the world, hearts break quietly. A child behind wire, a worker with blistered hands, a protester silenced by tear gas and the cover of night, a mother clutching an empty bowl. We walk by, heads down, eyes averted, hearts heavy, knowing yet saying nothing, hearing but turning away. The oppressed are everywhere. Their wounds wear no banners. Their pain leaves no blood. We pretend not to know, as if silence could shield us from their truths. These are the silences we choose, not from ignorance, but from the seduction of comfort. How long will we ignore the aching worlds around us? How many more must fall while we wait for a sign that has already been given, etched in the rhythm of every breath we take? Oppression does not need no armies. It grows in silence, in the pause between right and action, in shoulders that fold inward and eyes that close. And yet, even in the darkest corners, a candle is still lit. A breath is taken, a quiet call to those who will not stay silent. For every soul silenced, a voice must rise. For every wound ignored, a heart must break, and we must stand shoulder to shoulder so justice is not just a dream, but a reality we dare to build together. And the angels, they do not just record our silence, they mark the moment we rise, fists clenched, spines unbent. They inscribe our defiance against tyranny, our refusal to bow to fear or to falsehood. They witness the fire we carry forward, undaunted, unafraid. I share these words because this moment demands more than our awareness. It demands our courage, our voice, our unwavering solidarity. Let us rise together. Today is not a moment for silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sufyan. If you haven't had a time yet to fill out the donation form, please do so. I really want to lift up Sufyan's appeal. The first $50,000 we raise in the room today will be matched dollar for dollar by a generous donor. The ACLU of Illinois is proud to welcome our speaker today, Professor Sherrilyn Ifill. Sherrilyn Ifill is one of the country's most prominent thinkers and writers on civil rights and constitutional law. She previously served as the president and counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, where she led the organization's litigation challenging voter suppression, racial discrimination in the criminal legal system, and housing discrimination. She has been a clarion voice during the first Trump administration to resist rolling back gains in areas such as affirmative action, employment discrimination, and school discipline policies. Today, Professor Ifill is the Vernon Jordan Professor of Civil Rights at the Howard University School of Law, where she recently launched the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. The center, she notes, and the 14th Amendment touch on every aspect of American life and how we live together as Americans. She has lots of thoughts about the challenge of this moment and is a strong voice for how we fight back. Please join me in welcoming Sherrilyn Ifill to the ACLU of Illinois Lunch.
Thank you, everyone. Let me get through my list here. So thank you, Edwin, and thank you, Emmalee, and thank you, Colleen, my new friend, and Sufyan, that beautiful poem. Really appreciate it. Grateful for the presence of the Attorney General and his courage and his important work. Grateful for every elected official here, grateful for board members, grateful for donors, and grateful for all of you who are still here. Fantastic. It's wonderful. And all of the sponsors that I see, I know how important that is, and I won't do the whole pitch, but you do need to donate. I will. And you do need to donate. I've run an organization, and it's really nice to assemble all these folks, but You have to have the resources to do the work, and strategy should never be limited by money. So donate. Okay, here we are. Folks, you better stop and think and feel again, because we're headed for the brink. What's going to happen now that the King of Love is dead? Those words were sung by Nina Simone after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King 57 years ago today. We're headed for the brink. And it's interesting, you know, I think we just kind of go forward with these days, and I just wanted to make sure we took a pause and remembered that this is that 57th anniversary. That we remember that this country continues to struggle, has struggled, continues to struggle. That violence has never been really far from our country. That those who speak truth are always taking risks. That courage is required from each one of us. That we all owe a debt to those who came before us and tried to make the America that we wanted, that we dreamed of. And that those of us in this room today and around this country are beneficiaries of the work that was done by those who came before us. We have been privileged to live in the harvest of the great work that those people did. And even as we lament the moment that we are in right now, even as we are grief-stricken, I call myself grief-stricken because it is, the loss of democracy is something to be grieved. Even as we feel those losses, even as we are frustrated, even as we are angry, we should remember that this is just our time. And the harvest doesn't last forever. They did the work so that we could have the lives that we have. They did the work so that this room could look like it looks, if we're honest. And we've gotten so accustomed to it. We feel so comfortable with it. We've forgotten that it came at great, great cost. A week after Martin Luther King was assassinated, Congress finally passed the Fair Housing Act by one vote. It was just kind of an act of an effort to tamp down what was happening in cities around the country. We have only been a democracy, I would say, since 1954, certainly since Brown versus Board of Education. You cannot call yourself a democracy if half your country is governed by legal apartheid. And some would say not until 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was passed. But that's short. That's a short period of time. We haven't been at this very long. And we just happen to have been privileged to be born and to live in the sweet spot. Been born, most of us, or at least come of age, most of us, after World War II. And so in a world order that had certain values and principles that we have come to think of as just normal. Come to our adulthood after the Civil Rights Movement, and so we walk in and out of rooms like this all the time without even noticing it, without even remembering that this room was made and created by the sacrifice, the blood, the lives of people who came before us. Because we've lived in the harvest. And as I shared with some of my friends, it may be that we are the first generation that is so far removed from an agricultural past that we actually think the harvest lasts forever. It doesn't. You have to plant. And that's the time we're in. We've been called to plant for our children and our grandchildren and their children. It's okay for us to be angry and grief-stricken and to lament what we have lost, but not at the expense of taking up our responsibility to do the planting that they will need. So, let me say what I came to say, and I want to certainly thank Colleen for laying the groundwork of everything that we're confronting, because I'll skip that part of my remarks, because I think we know that. But I do want to say that I'm really happy to be here. I love the city of Chicago. I do. If you weren't in the middle of the country, you would be perfect. I like to be in international waters really quickly, just in case. Second, I love a luncheon. I don't know about you, but I love a luncheon. It's like, you know, you don't really have to commit like you do to a dinner, but you know, you get to see everyone, and then you go back to your office and you don't work really hard afterwards, so I like that. And third, I really cherish every opportunity in these challenging times when we're fighting every day to just hold together the crumbling foundations of our democracy. When we're really at war, I take very seriously the opportunity to fire up the troops. And that's why I'm here today. Because you, ACLU, are the troops. You're not the only ones, of course. There are organizations, grassroots groups, civil rights organizations, lawyers fighting on the front lines every day. I am, as you can imagine, partial to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, an organization I love and which I've been privileged to lead for 10 years. LDF has done, give it up for LDF. You know Thurgood Marshall was on your national board. LDF has done and is doing extraordinary work, but much of it in partnership with the ACLU. And in the course of my career, I've been able to see up front the intensity and reach of the ACLU's work. First, as a fellow in the Reproductive Freedom Project in the ACLU's national office, my first job out of law school. Working with extraordinary lawyers in that office on 43rd Street, working on issues of abortion and access to reproductive health care, but also during my days running an environmental justice clinic at the University of Maryland Law School, co-counseling with the ACLU of Maryland on transportation discrimination cases, and then back at LDF, standing shoulder to shoulder through the first Trump term and beyond. The ACLU is everywhere, and this is important. Not just that you have a national office, but that we can know as Americans that everywhere we travel in every state, we can find you. And it's particularly important in this moment because I want to talk today about the erosion of institutions in the face of Trump 2.0. Because this is by far the greatest, most catastrophic collapse we could have imagined. And to be honest, a year ago, I could not have imagined it. Democracies are not just made up of citizens. It's important that citizens participate in a democracy. And many of us are deeply involved in elections and voter registration and voting rights litigation. That's my trade. And we know how important it is for citizens to participate in the political process and vote. And I agree with that. But democracies, healthy democracies, are undergirded by strong democratic institutions. Media, whose job it is to keep the citizenry informed of the information we need to make good decisions. Universities, where ideas are debated and incubated, and where a segment of the population can develop expertise and knowledge that advances the democracy. The business community, which fires the economy and provides meaningful work for citizens. Even faith institutions that provide a spiritual respite and succor and that can anchor vulnerable communities are important for healthy democracies. And there is, of course, no healthy democracy that doesn't have a strong legal protection at legal profession that holds the rule of law. Today, every one of those institutions in our country has found itself unprepared to withstand assault. We've seen the media collapse in the face of Trump 2.0. bending the knee, obeying in advance, pulling their punches on stories, firing anchors who they deemed controversial for their criticisms of this administration, turning over their op-ed pages, and betraying their trust, their sacred role in a democracy, the sacred role of the free press. We've seen the business community bend the knee. We've seen a succession of business leaders take a pilgrimage to see the president and then the president-elect and pledge their tribute, some of $1 million, to ensure their access. We saw them sitting at the inauguration ahead of cabinet secretaries, demonstrating their role in this new administration. We've heard business leaders say, even before Trump 2.0, that, you know, he may be bad for America, but he's good for, in that case, CBS. How is that possible? How is it possible if you are a business leader, a leader of an American corporation, a corporation incorporated in a state, in our union, and bound by the laws of this country, and a beneficiary of democracy, a beneficiary of a stable government, of the peaceful transfer of power, of a population educated through a public education system, of public works that paved the road on the way to the CBS studios in New York. You are the beneficiary of all of those things, but you can say it's bad for America, but good for CBS. We've seen faith institutions turn themselves inside out and upend the very tenets of their faith tradition to make way for a cult-like obeisance to an authoritarian. We've seen universities, we have seen them bend the knee. We have seen them make agreements to satisfy the appetite of an authoritarian. And finally, over the last 2 weeks, we have seen those regarded as at the highest levels of the legal profession capitulate. Now, I know that there are some who haven't, but I also know that only 9 of the 100 most prominent law firms in this country signed on to the amicus brief in the Perkins-Coie case. And what I have heard from many of the folks in these law firms at the highest levels, some of whom are friends of mine, is that they've been under so much pressure. And I posted a story on my newsletter last week about the pressure that we've conveniently forgotten that civil rights lawyers faced during the civil rights movement. People have forgotten. We've conveniently forgotten that the Legal Defense Fund, the organization I love, was put out of Alabama and could not practice in Alabama for 6 years. Did you know that? The state of Alabama, the state of Florida, the state of Texas, and many others in the South, some of them passed laws and some of them enforced laws in ways to keep the Legal Defense Fund from working in those states. They accused the Legal Defense Fund of soliciting clients, of orchestrating the Montgomery bus boycott, of paying clients, playing Arthurine Lucy, who desegregated University of Alabama. And during the pendency of those cases, as they made their way up to the higher courts, LDF was prevented from practicing in those states. And you don't know this because LDF continued to do such powerful, consequential work that you just assumed it was uninterrupted by challenges to their very institutions as lawyers. You forget that when Constance Baker Motley, the great civil rights attorney and later federal judge, was litigating the desegregation cases in the schools in Birmingham with attorney Arthur Shores, that they blew up his home. That they blew up his home in opposition to the legal work that he was doing. We forget that when C.B. King, the great civil rights attorney, arrived at the jail in Americus, Georgia, to see one of his clients, a white protester who had been arrested, that the local sheriff beat him over the head with a cane. And whenever you're ready, you can take out your phone and Google C.B. King beaten by sheriff, and you will see the picture of what a lawyer, an American lawyer, looked like outside that jail, simply for trying to see his client. Pressure, lawyers under pressure, it is not unprecedented. And the pressure that they face, the pressure to the existence of the ability of the LDF to do its work and of the physical safety of lawyers, far exceeds the pressure that law firms face from the possibility of not making hundreds of millions, but making only tens of millions. So this is a grave moment indeed. But I have to say, I stand here very proud and very confident. I have students at Howard Law School who challenge my confidence, and when they challenge me, I do pause for a minute and I think, goodness, what if I'm crazy, you know? But I am confident. I always have been confident. I always have been confident in the belief, perhaps because my whole career has been surrounded by people like you. I don't know any differently than to believe that there are people who are utterly relentless in the fight for justice and equality. And so you'll forgive me if that gives me an unnatural confidence about this moment. I don't mean an absurd confidence. I don't know whether we will make it out of this moment as a democracy. I don't know. I can't know that. You can't know that. I believe we will, but I don't know that we will. I know that ultimately we will. I have complete confidence in that. I'm also painfully aware that along the way to bringing us to a healthy democracy, many people will be hurt along the way. And it is already happening. I spent 2 sleepless nights after the administration rounded up who they say were 250 Venezuelans and took them to this prison in El Salvador. That I would live in a country that would disappear people in this way. Although I have known this country to disappear people, this struck me as particularly horrifying. And so I know what we're facing. But I am secure in the knowledge that there is one part of our democratic infrastructure still standing strong. The civil rights and civil liberties community remains clear, strong, guided by our principles. We know the role we played in pushing back against threats to our democracy in the first Trump administration. And despite our exhaustion, our frustration, even our disbelief that we can have found ourselves as a country once again, giving the keys to the drunk uncle once again, as Colleen described it, subjecting our country to the cruel, lawless, anti-democratic leadership of Donald Trump, still, we stand strong. We gathered up our tools in November and readied ourselves to fight again. We don't have the choice to cut deals that undercut our very mission. We don't sign away due process. You cannot convince us that diversity, equity, and inclusion is immoral, even if a president writes it in an EO. We will not ignore equal protection. We will not and cannot treat the First Amendment or the 14th Amendment as optional. And it's one of the reasons that I launched the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy at Howard. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution represents the refounding of our nation. It is the blueprint for the nation that you and I have come to expect and believe in. The words equal that show up in the 14th Amendment do not show up in our first Constitution. I mean, if I ask you about the founders of our country and you say Hamilton and Jefferson and Jay, all the names you would normally say, and you would not say John Bingham and Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens and Frederick Douglass, then you would be leaving out the refounding of our country that happened after the Civil War and that created the country we have come to expect. Let me repeat again, the concept of equality does not exist in that first Constitution. I know I'm hurting somebody's feelings, but let me just say it again. The first Constitution, we know the concept of equality doesn't exist because the first Constitution made the decision, the compromise, to, for purposes of representation, treat black people as 3/5 of a person. The first Constitution that was created by those guys who were brilliant guys who did some really great things, but they also, in that first Constitution, allowed for the continuation of the slave trade until 1808. So that's the first Constitution. If you're thinking, oh yeah, it's about equality, we're a country of equality and justice, it's because equal protection shows up in the 14th Amendment. And what those founders did was they reached back across the first Constitution, back to where you first heard those words in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That's why you think it was in the first Constitution, but it wasn't. And so we will not treat the guarantee of due process, the guarantee of equal protection, as immoral, as inconvenient. We will not accept that simply because the president writes it in an EO. And when the Supreme Court gets it wrong, we will go back to our lab and work on strategies to make sure they get it right. That's what we do. We will not accept the disappearing of undocumented people. We won't forget the names of those who have been stolen and placed in a nightmare. We know that students, whatever their country of origin, have the right to protest peacefully without fear of deportation. We are the ones who actually know what it looks like to fight racism and anti-Semitism. Most of us have been doing it our entire careers, and we know that it doesn't look like deporting people for writing letters or op-eds. We know that it doesn't look like barring lawyers from federal buildings because they dare to represent your opponents. We know it doesn't look like placing academic departments into federal receivership at private universities. It doesn't look like investigating lawyers and law firms that have sued the presidential administration. Fighting against racism and anti-Semitism does not look like border agents reviewing the social media posts of academics who arrive at our airports for conferences and turning back people who dared to criticize our president. It does not look like detaining tourists at the border and holding them for weeks on end. We know how to fight white supremacy, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia. We know how to do that. We created the very field of civil rights and civil liberties. And now these people purport to tell us that fighting anti-Semitism requires these incursions into our rights and the elimination of the guarantees of the First and the 14th Amendments. That's pretty clear, yes. We know this, and we can't be gaslit, and that's why we're so important. We are an essential democratic institution. We exist as a continual, annoying, marching, organizing, litigating reminder of the standards by which any healthy democracy must operate. We are a thorn in the side of authoritarians, and we must wear that boldly. We are not looking to cut deals. We throw sand in the gears of cruel and illegal policies. We enjoin unconstitutional policies. We protect migrants and trans people and students and black people and Muslim people and Jewish people and free speech and equality. We actually know what due process means and why it's so important. We don't say things like, well, if you committed a crime, you're not entitled to due process, because we know that we don't know whether you committed a crime until you have due process. We know little things like that. And if we don't stand tall, if we don't speak, if we don't show up, if we don't annoy the hell out of them, people will think that that makes sense. So we have to take our expertise out there, as we will this Saturday in cities all over this country. We have to begin to think of ourselves that way, as a critical aspect of our democracy's infrastructure. We are non-negotiable. We are mission critical to American democracy. Our democracy is not something that survives without the constant pushing of people like us in this room. If we've made any mistakes in this country, it was the belief that we were forever set on a path of progress. That is not how democracies work. We have to recognize that, in particular our country, every country has to know this. You have to know what's in your national DNA. That's why I love the 14th Amendment so much, because if you really read the whole 14th Amendment, and even most of the lawyers in here have not read the whole 14th Amendment because we weren't taught it in law school. We read Section 1 with all the nice rights and guarantees, then we read Section 5 that said Congress has the enforcement power. We didn't read Section 2, in which the framers of the 14th Amendment so recognized the stubbornness of white supremacy that they came up with a punishment structure for states that wouldn't allow black men to vote. Most of us, until last year, when the state of Colorado removed President Trump from the ballot for being an insurrectionist, had never read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But those framers could write that amendment because they recognized what was in the DNA of our country. Before they wrote the 14th Amendment, they sent emissaries, and they themselves studied what was happening in the South. And their emissaries emerged with two things that really troubled them. One was the stubborn persistence of white supremacy, and the other was the stubborn persistence of an insurrectionist spirit. Frederick Douglass said that the spirit of the traitor will be passed from sire to son. He said it will not end in a year, it will not end in an age. That's why he was furious that there was not an affirmative right to vote for black people in the 14th Amendment, because he said it's the only way we can protect ourselves. They noted these two things, and that's why they wrote Sections 2 and Section 3. And what we have to face, because I've sometimes had my tussles with folks in various ACLU chapters who, around the issue of race, around the issue of the centrality of racism to the project of unraveling American democracy. And I want to stand here and tell you that we have to diagnose the problem in order to be correctly, in order to be able to solve it. I describe it this way. I have diabetes in my family. Anybody else have diabetes in their family? Oh, this very healthy crowd. Okay, I see some. You have something. You have breast cancer. You have high blood pressure. You have some other form of cancer. You have something in your family that you probably are aware of, and you wanted to know that this exists in your family because, you know, some of us come from families where old folks don't really talk about, you know, illnesses. They describe it all in very opaque terms. And you'll say, but yes, but what did Aunt, you know, Olivia, you know, what did she have? Well, something with her stomach, you know, and you want to know what it is, right? You want to know whether it was colon cancer. You want to know. And why do you want to know? You want to know because when you know what is in your DNA, what is in your genetic makeup, you can engage in activities and conduct that protects against the possibility of its manifestation and the harm that it may cause in your own life. If you have a parent that has diabetes and a grandparent that has had diabetes like I do, you're not eating all the cake at the table and you know what I mean? You might exercise, you might engage in various activities to protect your health. If you have a parent, a mom that had breast cancer, you are vigilant about your mammograms, are you not? Right? You want to know so that you can protect against it. I don't have diabetes. I have 9 siblings. None of us had diabetes, even though my father had diabetes. Doesn't mean it's going to happen because it's in your DNA. But it does mean it's in there and it can be activated, right? By lifestyle, by environment, and so forth. And so that's the part you can control. Where am I going with this? You got to know what's in the DNA of your country. You got to know. One of the reasons why when you go to Germany and you're in Berlin, you stumble across, you can't walk 10 steps without stumbling across some commemoration of the Holocaust, is because they kind of know they know themselves. And they never want to forget it. They're going to force you to confront it. Remember, J.D. Vance went over there and told them, you're too guilt-ridden. That's what he told them, right? And they rejected that. What I'm telling you about the 14th Amendment is what's in our DNA. And white supremacist ideology is in the DNA of this country. It doesn't mean every single person is a white supremacist. It doesn't mean that everything that happens is white supremacist. But it does mean that it's in there, it's in the juice, and we have to do things that protect against it. That's why we have civil rights laws, right? We have fair housing laws to protect against discrimination in housing, right? We have the Voting Rights Act to protect against voting discrimination. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to protect against discrimination in public accommodations. We create these elements and these infrastructures to protect against something that we know exists within the DNA of the country. And that's why when people come to me and say, when are we gonna just, end racism? That's not my job. That's like for faith leaders, or you know what I mean? I'm not your pastor, right? That is a problem of the spirit and the soul. But what we can do as Democrats, small d Democrats, who are working in a democracy, is we can create infrastructures within our country that protect us against the worst impulses that might arise. That might arise. That's why we had Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that said that if you participate in insurrection, you can't hold state or federal government. And you know what the Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court said, well, this has not been used. This has never been used at the federal level before. Well, yes, we should be proud that we don't regularly have insurrections that compel us to activate Section 3. But we have it to protect against, because those framers saw this thing and said, right? And so they put it in there. If they didn't think it would ever happen again, it would have been in a statute. When you put something in the Constitution, it's because you feel like this might be a permanent worry, right? It's not because we regularly have the military quartering troops in our houses, right? But because it happened, it's like, this seems like something we want to make sure we protect against. So we have to be prepared to be able to say that, to be able to look at our country, see all the promise of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, due process, equal protection, birthright citizenship. First line of the 14th Amendment, every person born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen of the United States and of the state in which they reside. Explosive, powerful. Another provision of the 14th Amendment that made this room, because many of your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents came with the knowledge that their children would be American, with the knowledge that they too could be naturalized. Not with the old world where you were French because your mom was French, or German because your father and your grandfather were German, but you could come to this country and be American. That's kind of part of one of the selling points. And we can talk about all this migration now, but tens of millions of European immigrants came with that guarantee. So we have to be able to confront this thing in our DNA, and so we have to understand the role that racism plays and why we have to have these protections. And these are arguments I used to have with the tech guys, with Zuckerberg, about you create this whole public platform, but you know absolutely nothing about civil rights, and so you're like, what? They're using the platform for what? Yeah, because we have to protect against those things. That's what we do here, right? So we're the ones who know about this. We know how to do this. And we can go toe to toe with anyone and everyone on the meaning of the words of the Constitution. And even better, the reason we're annoying is because we won't be silenced. We won't be bought off. We won't trade our integrity, our founding, our forebears, our mission to the authoritarians. And for that reason, we are the most important democratic institutions at this moment still standing. We are. We are. I know that there are people who will say, no, no, it's business, it's the job creators. I know it's people who will say those things. I think it's us. I think it's us because we didn't need Colleen to tell us that the ACLU of Illinois will not stand down. We didn't even, she said it, we clapped because we were excited, but it's not like we were wondering, I wonder if the ACLU will stand down. Like, we're not wondering that. That's how sure we are of our institutions. And we're tired, yes, we're tired. And we're even afraid. I think it's okay to admit that. My mentor and predecessor, Elaine Jones, the first woman to run the LDF, says, well, you just cannot be afraid. And I said, Elaine Jones, not everyone is Elaine Jones. I mean, Elaine Jones is not afraid of anyone. That's this beautiful thing. But you can be afraid. I think it's okay. And when you tell people that they can't be afraid, you suggest to people that they have to be superhuman to do this work. And you don't have to be. You have to be able to hold your fear in one hand and keep your determination in the other. Your fear is a healthy recognition of what we are up against, of what we are facing. And it's not fun. It's not fun. It's not fun to be the subject of like a whole Fox and Friends morning segment because of things you said about Pete Hegseth, as I was. That was not fun. And what comes after that, on social media and other places, that's not fun either. I didn't live in my own home the last year I ran LDF. We don't talk about these things because C.B. King, because Arthur Shores, because we know what this work requires. So it's okay to be afraid, if not for yourself, then maybe for your family, for sure. It doesn't change anything I do, except, make me look over my shoulder a little bit. I still do what I do. It's okay to admit that this is a very, very frightening time. It is. But you hold that with your determination and your knowledge of who you are. And those two things can fit together. We can function with our fear. We just can't be paralyzed by it. In the same way you can be tired. How many of us press through our fatigue? Lawyers do that all the time. And we can still find joy. We have to do the work with joy. We can still go for walks in nature and take forest baths. We can listen to Stevie Wonder if you ever feel bad. You just put Stevie Wonder on. You just put him on. We can dance, we can eat good food, we can go to clubs and ball games and play with our kids and grandkids. We can enjoy good wine and nice clothes and car. Well, at least we could before the tariffs, but maybe one day again. But a day may come when we're not able to enjoy those things. This is the trick I play with myself every day. I wake up every day and I say, yes, I'm afraid. I see all these things potentially on the horizon, and there may come a time when this, when that, when this, when that, but today is not that day. Today is a day when I still have the freedom I need to do the work that I do, and that makes me happy. And so I encourage you to embrace what joy you can as you do the work, if only because it makes them matter when they see us be joyful. I love it. And we must show our children that fighting for justice can be a way of life that does not exclude happiness, joy, fun, laughter, silliness. My kids used to tell me that NPR in the car gave them a headache. But they still saw me having a good time, And so you have to show them how you can balance these things. And so I wanted to come basically to salute you all, to encourage you to keep up the fight, to do it joyfully, to put down the phone and go sit by your beautiful lake, to affirm to your children and your grandchildren that you will do what you can to pass on to them a world in which they can truly, truly live. I encourage you. Most of all, to delight, to revel, to embrace the privilege, the blessing of doing good work in challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherrilyn. We hope you're inspired by today's program, inspired to take action, inspired to still have fun, inspired to continue to fight for the world that we want to see. You don't have to wait long to participate. Remember, the Hands Off rally starts tomorrow at noon at Daley Plaza and in locations across Chicago and across Illinois. We hope to see you there. There's still time to fill out a donation form. Somebody vastly more responsible than me will pick it up. And we'll see you next year at the ACLU of Illinois Lunch. Thank you very much.